The scent of cinnamon and apple hit Colt Quinn before he even saw the small adobe house on the edge of Lordsburg, New Mexico. And for a moment, he forgot about the ache in his bones from 3 weeks on the trail herding cattle north from Texas in the summer of 1878. His horse whinnied softly as he dismounted, drawn toward the source of that heavenly smell like a man walking through the desert toward an oasis. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, turning the dusty street into shimmering waves of heat, but that aroma cut through everything else. Through the open window, he could hear humming, a woman's voice carrying a tune he did not recognize but found instantly comforting. His stomach growled loudly enough that he actually looked down at it in mild embarrassment, though no one was around to hear. Colt had not planned to stop in Lordsburg. His intention had been to ride straight through to Silver City, where a job supposedly waited for him at one of the mining operations. But 3 weeks of hardtack, jerky, and coffee so strong it could strip paint had left him desperate for real food. The humming continued, light and carefree, the sound of someone content in their solitude. He tied his horse to the hitching post near what looked like a small general store attached to the house and walked toward the door, his spurs jingling with each step. Before he could knock, a voice called out, "If you are here for pie, you will have to wait another 20 minutes. They just went in the oven." Colt pushed his hat back and leaned toward the open window. Inside, he could see a woman bent over a large wooden table, rolling out dough with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, wisps of it curling around her face from the heat of the kitchen. She wore a simple calico dress covered by a flour-dusted apron, and she worked with the kind of rhythm that spoke of years doing the same task. "I can wait, madam," Colt said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "That is, if you are selling." The woman looked up then, and Colt found himself staring into the warmest brown eyes he had ever seen. She studied him for a moment, taking in his dusty clothes, the trail-worn look of him, the way he held himself with the particular wariness of a man who had been traveling alone for too long. Her expression softened. "I am selling," she said. "You look like you have come a long way." "Texas," Colt said. "Brought cattle up with a crew, but they headed east and I am going west." She nodded as if this explained everything about him. "Sit on the porch there, I will bring you water. The pies need time, but I have some cornbread left from lunch if you are hungry now." Colt wanted to maintain some dignity and say he could wait, but his stomach betrayed him with another loud growl. The woman smiled, actually smiled, and he felt something in his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with hunger for food. "Cornbread it is," she said. "Sit. Rest. You look like you need both." He did as she instructed, lowering himself onto the wooden bench on the small covered porch. His legs protested, his whole body protesting really, but in a good way. The kind of ache that came from honest work. He removed his hat and set it beside him, running his fingers through his hair and dislodging approximately half the dust of New Mexico in the process. The woman emerged a few minutes later carrying a plate with a generous wedge of cornbread, a small crock of butter, and a large glass of water. Up close, Colt could see she was younger than he had first thought, probably around his own age of 26 or 27. She had laugh lines around her eyes but also a sadness in them that spoke of loss. "Thank you, madam," he said, accepting the plate. "I can pay." "I know you can," she said. "I would not have brought it otherwise. No offense meant, but charity is not something I can afford." "None taken," Colt said. He meant it. He respected honesty. "What do I owe you? Eat first," she said. "We can settle up after. My name is Zara Vaughn. This is my place such as it is." "Colt Quinn," he said. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Vaughn." "Mrs.," she corrected gently. "Widow, actually." 3 years now. I am sorry for your loss, Colt said, and meant that too. Zara nodded, accepting the condolence with the grace of someone who had heard it many times before and knew the words, while kindly meant, changed nothing. Eat your cornbread, Mr. Quinn. I have to check on those pies. She disappeared back inside, and Colt bit into the cornbread. It was still slightly warm, sweet and crumbly, and so good he almost groaned aloud. He buttered the second half and tried to eat slowly to savor it, but failed miserably. The water was cool and clean, likely from a well, and he drank it gratefully. Through the open window, he could hear Zara humming again, that same tune from before, and he found himself listening to it more than he was paying attention to the food. When he finished, he set the plate aside and leaned back against the adobe wall, closing his eyes for just a moment. The humming continued, rising and falling like a gentle current, and Colt felt something in him start to unknot. He had been on his own for so long. Even with the cattle crew, he had been alone in all the ways that mattered. He had no family left, no place to call home, just a series of jobs that kept him moving and a bedroll that went wherever he did. The loneliness of it hit him sometimes like a physical thing, a weight on his chest that made it hard to breathe. "You can sleep there if you need to," Zara's voice said softly. "The pies still have 15 minutes. Colt opened his eyes to find her standing in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "I am fine," he said, "just resting my eyes." "You are exhausted," she said matter-of-factly. "When did you last sleep in a bed?" Colt had to think about it. 3 weeks, give or take. Zara shook her head. "There is a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Henderson runs it. Clean beds, decent food. Tell her I sent you and she will give you a fair price." "I might do that," Colt said. He hesitated, then asked, "You do this often, bake pies, I mean?" "Every day," Zara said. "I sell them to the boarding house, the saloon, the restaurant, anyone who wants them. It is how I make my living now. My husband left me this house and a little bit of money, but not enough to live on without working." "That is hard work," Colt observed, "baking all day in this heat." Zara shrugged. "It is honest work, and I like it mostly. The baking, I mean. There is something peaceful about it. You start with these separate ingredients and you mix them together just right and something good comes out of it. It makes sense in a way other things do not." Colt understood that more than he could express. He nodded, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "What kind of pies are they?" he asked finally. "Apple today," Zara said. "I got a good supply of dried apples from a freight wagon last week. Tomorrow will be cherry. Day after that, peach if I can get my hands on some. I vary it to keep people interested." "Smart," Colt said. "Necessary," Zara corrected. "Competition is fierce, even in a town this small. There is another woman, Mrs. Peters, who also bakes. She is good, very good. I have to be better." "I bet you are," Colt said, and was rewarded with another smile. "You have not tasted my pie yet," Zara pointed out. "Do not make promises you cannot keep, Mr. Quinn." But when the timer went off, when Zara brought out one of the pies and cut him a slice, when Colt took his first bite of that perfect combination of flaky crust and cinnamon-spiced apples, he knew his instinct had been right. It was, without exaggeration, the best pie he had ever eaten in his life. He told her so, and she laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. "You are just hungry," she said, but he could tell she was pleased. "No," Colt said seriously. "I have eaten a lot of pie in my time, madam. This is something special. This is heaven." Zara's cheeks flushed pink. "You are kind to say so." "I am honest," Colt said. "There is a difference." He paid her for the cornbread and the pie slice and added extra for the water and the use of the porch. Zara tried to refuse the extra, but Colt insisted. "For the company," he said. It has been a while since I talked to someone who was not trying to sell me something or cheat me out of something. All right, Zara said softly. Thank you. Colt stood, retrieving his hat. He should go. He should find that boarding house, get some sleep, and be on his way tomorrow. Silver City was still 2 days' ride, but he found himself hesitating, reluctant to leave the small oasis of peace he had found here. Will you be baking tomorrow? He asked. Every day, Zara reminded him. Right, Colt said. Well, thank you for the food, Mrs. Vaughn. It was truly a pleasure. Safe travels, Mr. Quinn, Zara said. But as Colt walked away, leading his horse toward the boarding house Zara had recommended, he found himself already planning to stop by again before he left town. Just to say goodbye properly, he told himself. Just to maybe have another slice of that pie. He did not examine too closely the real reason, which was that he wanted to hear her humming again, wanted to see her smile, wanted to feel that brief moment of connection that had made him feel less alone than he had in months. The boarding house was exactly as Zara had described it. Mrs. Henderson was a brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who showed him to a small but clean room and told him supper was at 6 sharp, no exceptions. Colt paid for 2 nights, surprising himself. He had only planned on one, but something made him want to stay a little longer in Lordsburg. That evening, he ate a decent meal of beef stew and biscuits with the other boarders, a mix of miners, ranch hands, and traveling salesmen. The conversation was loud and mostly pointless, the kind of talk men made to fill silence rather than to communicate anything meaningful. Colt participated enough to be polite, but his mind kept drifting back to the small adobe house on the edge of town, to the woman humming while she baked pies alone. He learned a few things from the other boarders. Zara's husband had been killed in a mine collapse 3 years ago. She had no children, no family nearby. She kept to herself mostly, was known for her baking and her fair prices. A few men had tried courting her, but she had turned them all down politely but firmly. She was, by all accounts, content in her solitude. Colt wondered about that. He wondered if she really was content, or if she was just good at pretending, the way he was. He wondered what it would be like to have a purpose beyond the next job, the next town, the next lonely stretch of trail. That night, in the unfamiliar comfort of a real bed, Colt slept better than he had in weeks. He dreamed of cinnamon and apples, of humming in the afternoon heat, of warm brown eyes and a smile that made something in his chest feel less tight. When he woke the next morning, he told himself he was being a fool. He had a job waiting in Silver City. He could not afford to get distracted by a pretty widow who made good pie. But when he went downstairs for breakfast, he found himself asking Mrs. Henderson about Zara. "Oh, Zara is lovely," Mrs. Henderson said, setting a plate of eggs and bacon in front of him. "Brings me 6 pies a week like clockwork. Never late, never a bad batch. That girl works harder than anyone I know." "She mentioned she competes with a Mrs. Peters," Colt said, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Henderson snorted. "Margaret Peters. That woman is a menace. She spreads lies about Zara, tries to undercut her prices, sends her no-good sons around to harass the suppliers. I stopped buying from her months ago on principle alone." "That is rough," Colt said, feeling an unexpected surge of protectiveness toward Zara. "Zara handles it with grace, though," Mrs. Henderson continued. "Never says a bad word about Margaret, just keeps baking her pies and being kind to everyone. That is the kind of person she is. Too good for this rough town, if you ask me." Colt ate his breakfast slowly, thinking. After he finished, he walked to the general store and bought himself a new shirt, as his current one was more dust than fabric. The proprietor, a thin man with spectacles, was happy to chat while he wrapped the purchase. "Staying in town long?" the man asked. "A day or two," Colt said. "Business or pleasure? Just passing through, Colt said. On my way to Silver City, mining work. That is the plan. The man nodded sagely. Good money in mining if you do not mind the danger. Lost a lot of good men to those mines over the years. Zara Vaughn's husband, for one. Fine man he was. Terrible shame. Everyone in this town seemed to know Zara, Colt realized, and everyone spoke well of her. That said something. He spent the morning tending to his horse, getting his gear in order, and generally trying to convince himself that he did not need to go back to that adobe house. He failed spectacularly. By early afternoon, he found himself walking down the dusty street toward the edge of town, following his nose toward the scent of baking fruit and pastry. Zara was in her kitchen again, visible through the open window. This time she was crimping the edges of what looked like a cherry pie, her fingers moving with quick precision. She was humming a different tune today, something slower and sadder. When Colt's shadow fell across the window, she looked up and smiled. "Mr. Quinn," she said. "I did not expect to see you again. I thought you would be halfway to Silver City by now." "I decided to stay an extra day," Colt said. "Rest up properly before the last leg of the journey." "That is probably wise," Zara said. She set down the pie and wiped her hands on her apron. "Are you here for more pie, if you are selling?" Colt said. "Always," Zara said. "Come around to the porch. These need another 10 minutes in the oven." Colt did as instructed, settling onto the same bench as yesterday. Zara brought him water without being asked, and he thanked her. "How long have you been doing this?" Colt asked when she sat down beside him, keeping a respectable distance but close enough for conversation. "The baking, I mean." "Since I was a girl," Zara said. "My mother taught me. She was an excellent baker. I learned from the best." Her expression grew distant. "She died when I was 16. Fever. My father followed a year later. I think he died of a broken heart as much as anything else." "I am sorry," Colt said quietly. Zara shrugged, but he could see the old pain in her eyes. "It was a long time ago. I married Thomas, my husband, when I was 18. He was 23, working in the mines, saving up to buy a ranch. We had plans." She smiled sadly. "So many plans." "What happened?" Colt asked, then immediately regretted the question. "Sorry, you do not have to talk about it." "It is all right," Zara said. "Everyone knows the story anyway. There was a collapse. 5 men died, including Thomas. They got him out, but he had been crushed. He died 2 days later." She took a shaky breath. "I held his hand the whole time. He kept apologizing, saying he was sorry for leaving me alone. I told him it was not his fault, that I would be fine. I do not know if he believed me." Colt did not know what to say to that. Words felt inadequate in the face of such loss. So he just sat with her in silence, letting her know without speaking that he was there, that he heard her, that her grief mattered. "I am sorry," Zara said after a moment. "That was heavy. You came for pie, not my life story." "I do not mind," Colt said honestly. "And for what it is worth, I think you are doing more than fine. You have built a life for yourself. That takes courage." Zara looked at him, really looked at him, and Colt felt that strange tightness in his chest again. "What about you, Mr. Quinn? What is your story?" "Not much to tell," Colt said. "I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My parents died when I was 20, cholera outbreak. No siblings, no wife, no ties. I have been drifting since, taking work where I can find it. Cattle drives, ranch hand, broke horses for a while. Now I am headed for the mines because the pay is good." "But you do not want to go," Zara said, and it was not a question. Colt was surprised by her perception. "What makes you say that, the way you said it?" Zara explained. "Like you were describing a chore rather than an opportunity." "You do not want to go underground, do you?" "No," Colt admitted. "But a man does what he has to do to survive." "There are other jobs," Zara pointed out. "Other ways to survive." Not many that pay as well, Colt said. And I am tired of being broke, tired of moving from place to place with nothing to show for it. I want to save up enough to buy some land, maybe start my own ranch. The mines are dangerous, yes, but if I am careful, if I am lucky, I can make enough in a year or two to start over properly. Zara nodded slowly. That makes sense. But what if you could find something here, in Lordsburg, I mean? What if you did not have to go to Silver City at all? Colt's heart started beating faster. What do you mean? Before Zara could answer, the timer went off inside. She stood quickly. Hold that thought. I need to get these pies out before they burn. She disappeared inside, leaving Colt sitting on the porch with his thoughts spinning. Was she suggesting what he thought she was suggesting? Or was he reading too much into a simple question? He could not tell, and the uncertainty was maddening. Zara returned a few minutes later with a slice of cherry pie, still warm from the oven. She handed it to him along with a fork. Try this. Tell me what you think. Colt took a bite and closed his eyes. It was just as good as the apple pie, maybe even better. The cherries were tart and sweet at the same time, perfectly balanced, and the crust was somehow even flakier than before. This is incredible, he said. Mrs. Vaughn, you are an artist. Zara blushed. It is just pie. It is not just pie, Colt insisted. This is the kind of pie people tell stories about, the kind that makes men change their travel plans. Zara laughed at that. Is that so? It is, Colt said seriously. He set the empty plate aside and looked at her. What were you going to say before? About finding something here. Zara sat down again, folding her hands in her lap. I was thinking, she said slowly, that maybe you could stay. In Lordsburg, I mean, there is work here. The general store is always looking for help with heavy lifting and deliveries. The livery stable needs someone good with horses. The saloon needs a bouncer. Or if you wanted something more permanent, Old Man Jennings is selling his ranch. It is small, but it has good grazing land and a water source. You could probably get it for a fair price if you negotiated right. Colt listened to all this with growing amazement. Why are you telling me this? Zara looked down at her hands. I do not know exactly. Maybe because you seem like a good man and good men are rare. Maybe because you listened when I talked about Thomas, and you did not try to tell me it was time to move on, or that I should consider remarrying. Maybe because I am tired of baking pies alone and it was nice to have company yesterday. Nice to hear someone say they were good instead of just leaving money on the counter and walking away. They are more than good, Colt said softly. They are extraordinary. You are extraordinary. Zara looked up at him, her brown eyes wide. You do not know me, Mr. Quinn. Then let me, Colt said, surprising himself with his boldness. Let me stay for a while. Let me get to know you properly. Let me prove that I am worth your time. Why? Zara asked. Why would you change your plans for someone you just met? Colt thought about that. He thought about how lonely he had been, how empty his life had felt moving from place to place with no purpose beyond survival. He thought about how Zara's humming had made him feel, how her smile had lightened something in him that had been heavy for so long. He thought about the possibility of something more, something real, something that mattered. Because I am tired of being lonely, he said finally. Because your pie is the best I have ever tasted and I want to taste it again. Because when you look at me, I feel like I matter for the first time in years. Because maybe, just maybe, we could help each other be less alone. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I need help. What kind of help? Colt asked immediately. With the business, Zara said. I can barely keep up with the demand. I spend all day baking, then half the night preparing ingredients for the next day. I do not have time to properly promote myself or seek out new customers. And Mrs. Peters is trying to drive me out of business. She has connections I do not have. friends in town who listen to her lies about me. I am good at baking, Mr. Quinn, but I am not good at dealing with that kind of trouble. What kind of lies? Colt asked, feeling that protective surge again. That I use inferior ingredients, Zara said. That my kitchen is dirty, that I am unreliable. None of it is true, but some people believe her anyway. She wants to be the only baker in town, wants to control the market and charge whatever she wants. And her sons, Zara's expression grew troubled, they have been hanging around lately, making comments, asking when I am going to give up and leave town. It is unsettling. Colt felt anger rising in him. Have they threatened you? Not directly, Zara said, but the implication is there. I think Margaret sent them to scare me. It is working a little. I am alone here. If something happened, if they decided to do more than just talk, I would have no way to defend myself. That is not right, Colt said firmly. No one should have to live in fear like that. Welcome to the world of small business, Zara said with a bitter smile. It is not as romantic as it sounds. Colt made a decision. I will stay. Zara blinked. What? I will stay in Lordsburg, Colt said. I will help you with whatever you need. Protection, deliveries, ingredient sourcing, dealing with the Peters family. Whatever it takes. In exchange, you can pay me what you can afford and feed me. I do not need much. Mr. Quinn, that is very generous, but I cannot ask you to do that, Zara protested. You have your own plans, your own future to think about. I am thinking about it, Colt said. And I am thinking that maybe my future does not have to involve going underground and hoping I do not get crushed like your husband did. Maybe my future could be here, helping someone who needs it, doing work that matters. He paused. Unless you do not want my help, if that is the case, I will respect that and move on. Zara looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she smiled, really smiled. I would like your help, Mr. Quinn, very much. Colt, he said. If we are going to be working together, you should call me Colt. Colt, Zara repeated, trying it out. All right, and you should call me Zara. Mrs. Vaughn makes me feel old. You are not old, Colt said. You are young and beautiful and talented and brave. Zara's cheeks flushed pink again. You certainly have a way with words. I only speak the truth, Colt said. They shook hands on it, and Colt felt a spark when their skin touched, something electric and alive that made his breath catch. From the way Zara's eyes widened, she felt it too. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Colt moved out of the boarding house and into a small room Zara had in the back of her property, originally meant for storage but serviceable as living quarters once he cleaned it out. He spent his days helping her with the baking operation, which turned out to be far more complex than he had imagined. First, there was the ingredient sourcing. Zara had been buying from the general store, which was convenient but expensive. Colt suggested they go directly to the suppliers, the freight wagons that came through town carrying goods from Santa Fe and El Paso. By cutting out the middleman, they saved significant money and got fresher ingredients. Then there was the delivery system. Zara had been waiting for customers to come to her, but Colt proposed they take the pies to the customers instead. He built a sturdy wooden cart that could hold multiple pies safely and began making rounds through town every afternoon, selling fresh baked goods at the boarding house, the saloon, the restaurant, and even at the mining office where men gathered before their shifts. The increased visibility brought in more customers, which meant more baking, which meant longer hours. But Colt did not mind. He found himself genuinely enjoying the work. There was something satisfying about the process, about taking raw ingredients and creating something that brought people joy. And working alongside Zara, he discovered, was the best part of his day. She taught him how to roll dough, how to crimp edges, how to tell when a pie was perfectly done just by the smell. She was patient with his mistakes and generous with her praise when he got things right. They developed a rhythm together, a comfortable partnership that felt natural and easy. Colt would prepare ingredients in the morning while Zara mixed the dough. She would assemble the pies while he cleaned and organized. They would bake together in the afternoon, and he would make deliveries while she started prep for the next day. And always, always, she hummed. Different tunes at different times, some happy and some sad, but always beautiful. Colt found himself looking forward to it, found himself listening for it when he woke up in the morning. The Peters family was not happy about their expanded operation. Margaret Peters herself showed up one day, a thin, severe woman with cold eyes and a harsh voice. "You think you are clever," she said to Zara, ignoring Colt entirely. "Hiring yourself a man to do your dirty work, but it will not save you. I have been in this town for 20 years. You have been here for 3. People are loyal to me." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Zara said calmly. "May the best baker win." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "It is not about being the best, it is about being smart, and you, girl, are not as smart as you think you are." She turned to leave, then paused. "Tell your hired hand to watch himself. Accidents happen." After she left, Colt said, "That sounded like a threat." "It was," Zara said, but her voice was shaking slightly. "I will not let anything happen to you," Colt said firmly. "I promise." Zara looked at him, and something shifted in her expression, something warm and vulnerable. "Why are you doing this, Colt? Really? You could be making good money in the mines by now. Instead, you are here, defending me from a bitter woman and her awful sons, working for barely enough to live on." "Why?" Colt stepped closer to her. They were in the kitchen, flour dust floating in the afternoon light, the smell of baking pie all around them. "Because I would rather be here with you than anywhere else in the world," he said honestly. "Because you make me want to stay in one place for the first time in my life. Because when I am with you, I do not feel lonely anymore." Zara's breath hitched. "Colt, I am not looking to remarry. I am not looking for a husband. I loved Thomas, and when he died, I thought that was it for me. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone." "I am not asking you to marry me," Colt said gently. "I am just asking you to let me stay. Let me help you. Let me be your friend, if nothing else. Anything more than that, if it happens, it happens. But I am not going anywhere, Zara. Not unless you tell me to go." Zara reached out and took his hand. "Do not go," she whispered. "Please do not go." Colt squeezed her hand. "I will not. I promise." That night Colt could not sleep. He lay in his small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in his mind. He had meant what he said. He would stay as long as she wanted him. But he also knew with absolute certainty that he was falling in love with her. Maybe he had been falling since that first day, since that first bite of pie, since he first heard her humming alone in her kitchen. The question was, did she feel the same way? Or was she still too bound to the memory of her dead husband to let anyone else in? The answer came sooner than he expected. 2 days later, Margaret Peters' sons showed up. There were 2 of them, both in their early 20s, both large and mean-looking. They arrived in the late afternoon when Colt was out making deliveries. When he returned, he found Zara standing in her kitchen, visibly shaken, with one of her pie racks knocked over and several pies destroyed on the floor. "What happened?" Colt demanded, setting down his cart and rushing to her. "The Peters boys," Zara said, her voice tight. "They came in, said their mother sent them. They said this was a warning that next time it would be worse. They knocked over the rack on purpose, laughed about it, then left." Colt felt rage like he had never felt before. "Did they hurt you?" "No," Zara said. "They did not touch me. But Colt, I am scared. What if they come back when you are not here? What if next time they do more than destroy pies?" Colt pulled her into his arms without thinking, and after a moment's hesitation, Zara melted against him. She was shaking. "I will not let that happen," he said fiercely. "I will talk to the sheriff." "The sheriff is friends with Margaret," Zara said bitterly. "He will not do anything." "Then I will talk to the Peters boys directly," Colt said. "I will make it clear that if they come near you again, they will have to deal with me." "Colt, no," Zara said, pulling back to look at him. "They are dangerous. They carry guns. They are not afraid to use them." "Neither am I," Colt said grimly. He was not a violent man by nature, but he had grown up in rough country. He knew how to handle himself. "I will not let them terrorize you, Zara. I will not." The next morning, Colt found the Peters boys at the saloon. They were drinking even though it was barely past noon, laughing loudly about something. When Colt walked up to their table, they looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "Well, if it is not the baker's little helper," one of them said. His name was Daniel, Colt had learned. The other was called Frank. "Stay away from Zara Vaughn," Colt said without preamble. "If you come near her or her property again, there will be consequences." Daniel laughed. "Oh, will there? And what are you going to do about it, Cowboy? You going to fight both of us?" "If I have to," Colt said evenly. "But I would rather not. I would rather we settle this like civilized men. Your mother has a problem with Zara's business. She can compete fair and square. But you do not get to threaten her or destroy her property. That is where I draw the line." Frank stood up, and he was indeed a large man, probably 6.5 feet tall and broad as a barn door. "You should leave town, friend, before you get hurt." "I am not leaving," Colt said. "And I am not your friend. Now, are we going to have a problem, or can we all walk away from this?" For a tense moment, Colt thought it was going to turn into a fight right there. But then the bartender, a grizzled old man named Sam, spoke up. "Boys, take it outside if you are going to brawl. I do not need my place getting torn up." That seemed to break the tension. Daniel sat back down. "This is not over," he said to Colt. "I did not think it was," Colt replied. "But now you know where I stand. Stay away from Zara." He walked out before they could respond, his heart pounding but his head high. It was not much, but it was something. He had drawn a line in the sand. When he got back to Zara's place, she was in the kitchen, trying to salvage what she could from the destroyed pies. She looked up when he came in, her expression anxious. "What happened?" "I told them to stay away from you," Colt said. "They were not happy about it, but they heard me." Zara set down the pan she was holding and walked over to him. "You did not have to do that. You did not have to put yourself in danger for me." "Yes, I did," Colt said simply. "Because I care about you, Zara. Because you matter to me. Because the thought of anyone hurting you makes me want to break things." Zara looked up at him, and in her eyes, Colt saw something he had not seen before. Not just gratitude or friendship, but something deeper, something that made his heart race. "Colt," she said softly, "I am falling in love with you. I did not want to. I tried not to, but I am." Colt cupped her face in his hands gently, like she was something precious. "I am already there," he said. "I have been falling since the first day I met you, since I heard you humming while you baked pies alone. Since I tasted heaven in your kitchen and realized I never wanted to leave." "What do we do now?" Zara whispered. "Now," Colt said, "I kiss you, if that is all right with you." "It is all right with me," Zara said and smiled. Colt leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, gentle at first, then deeper when she responded. She tasted like cherries and cinnamon, like everything good in the world. Her arms came up around his neck and she pressed closer to him, and Colt felt like his entire life had been leading to this moment, to this woman, to this perfect feeling of rightness. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Zara rested her forehead against his chest. "This is scary," she admitted. "Loving someone again, knowing I could lose you like I lost Thomas." "You will not lose me," Colt said, stroking her hair. "I am not going anywhere. I am going to stay right here with you for as long as you will have me." "Forever," Zara said. "I want you to stay forever." "Then that is what I will do," Colt promised. The next few months were the happiest of Colt's life. He and Zara fell into a pattern that felt like marriage even though they had not yet made it official. They worked together during the day, ate together in the evening, and sat on the porch together at night, talking and laughing and planning their future. The business continued to grow. Word spread about the quality of Zara's pies and the reliability of Colt's deliveries. They started getting orders from outlying ranches, and even from the military fort, 20 miles to the north. Colt had to upgrade the cart to handle the increased volume. Margaret Peters grew increasingly bitter as her own business declined. She tried lowering her prices, but people had already made up their minds. Zara's pies were better, plain and simple. Eventually, Margaret's sons stopped bothering them, perhaps realizing they were fighting a losing battle. In December of 1878, as the weather turned cold and the first snow dusted the mountains around Lordsburg, Colt asked Zara to marry him properly. He did not have a ring, not yet, but he had saved up enough money to buy one soon. They were in the kitchen, of course, because that was where they spent most of their time. Zara was rolling out dough for Christmas pies and Colt was peeling apples. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Zara looked up, startled. "What? Marry me?" Colt repeated. "I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build something real with you, something that lasts. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want to have children with you if you want that too. I want everything, Zara. With you." Zara set down her rolling pin. Her eyes were shining with tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you, Colt. I love you so much." They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Lordsburg. Mrs. Henderson stood up as witness for Zara, and Sam the bartender stood up for Colt. It was not fancy, but it was perfect. Zara wore a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and Colt wore his best suit, purchased specifically for the occasion. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, when Colt kissed his bride, he felt like the luckiest man alive. And when they went home to their small adobe house, when he carried her over the threshold and laid her gently on their bed, when they came together as husband and wife for the first time, Colt knew he had found what he had been searching for his entire life: home, family, love. The next year brought changes. In the spring of 1879, Old Man Jennings finally sold his ranch, and Colt bought it with the money they had saved. It was not large, just 50 acres with a small house and a barn, but it had potential. Colt spent his mornings working the ranch, building up a small herd of cattle and some horses, and his afternoons helping Zara with the pie business. In June, Zara told him she was pregnant. Colt was so happy he actually cried, something he had not done since he was a boy. They celebrated by baking a special pie together just for the two of them and eating it on the porch while watching the sunset. "Boy or girl?" Colt asked, his hand resting on her still flat belly. "I do not know," Zara said, "but either way they will be loved." "So loved," Colt agreed. Their son was born in February of 1880, a healthy baby boy with his mother's brown eyes and his father's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Zara's first husband, because Zara said she wanted to honor the man who had loved her first, even though Colt would love her last. Colt agreed wholeheartedly. He understood that Zara's heart was big enough for both memories and new love, and he loved her all the more for it. Margaret Peters passed away that same year, and her sons left town shortly after. Without their mother's bitterness driving them, they seemed to lose interest in the feud. Zara became the undisputed best baker in Lordsburg, and people came from miles around to buy her pies. As little Thomas grew, Colt taught him to ride horses and work the ranch. Zara taught him to bake, and the boy showed real talent for it. They were happy, the three of them, in their little corner of New Mexico. In 1882, they had a daughter. They named her Rose because she was as beautiful and delicate as the flower. She had Colt's green eyes and Zara's smile, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. The years passed in a blur of hard work and deep contentment. The ranch prospered. The pie business continued to thrive. Colt and Zara grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, Colt would think back to that day in 1878 when he had been a lonely cowboy riding through New Mexico with no real purpose or direction. He thought about how close he had come to passing through Lordsburg without stopping, how different his life would have been if he had not caught the scent of cinnamon and apple on the wind, if he had not heard a woman humming while she baked pies alone. He thought about how a single moment, a single decision could change everything. One evening in the summer of 1890, when Colt was 40 and Zara was 38, when their children were playing in the yard and the sun was setting over the mountains, Colt pulled his wife close on the porch of their ranch house. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked, leaning against him. "How lucky I am," Colt said. "How I found heaven in a slice of pie and asked you to stay with me." Zara laughed. "I think it was the other way around. I asked you to stay, remember? We asked each other," Colt said. "And we both said yes. Best decision I ever made." "Mine too," Zara said softly. Thomas ran up to them, now 10 years old and full of energy. "Papa, can we go riding tomorrow?" "Of course," Colt said. "Early before it gets too hot." "Can I come?" Rose asked, not wanting to be left out. She was 8 now, fearless and determined. "You can come," Colt assured her. The children ran off again, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. Zara hummed softly, that same tune she had been humming the day they met, and Colt closed his eyes, memorizing this moment. The sound of his wife's voice, the laughter of his children, the smell of the desert after sunset, the feeling of complete and utter contentment. This was what happiness looked like, he thought. This was what it meant to have a home. In 1895, Thomas, now 15, announced he wanted to open his own bakery in Silver City. He had learned everything Zara could teach him and wanted to strike out on his own. Colt helped him secure a loan and set up the business. It was hard to see his son leave, but he was proud of the young man Thomas had become. Rose, at 13, had no interest in baking. She loved horses and the ranch, and she rode better than most men twice her age. She helped Colt with the cattle and the breaking of new horses, and she had a natural gift for it. In 1898, when Colt was 46 and Zara was 44, they had a surprise. Another baby, a boy they named Samuel. The pregnancy was harder on Zara than the first 2 had been, and Colt worried constantly. But she came through it fine, and little Samuel was healthy and strong. "I am getting too old for this," Zara said, holding the baby while Colt fussed over her. "You are perfect," Colt said, kissing her forehead. "You have given me everything I could ever want." As Samuel grew, he showed a combination of his siblings' talents. He could bake like Thomas and ride like Rose, and he had a head for business that neither of his older siblings possessed. Colt and Zara knew he would do great things. In 1902, Thomas married a sweet girl from Silver City named Rebecca, and they had Colt and Zara's first grandchild, a girl named Emma. Colt held his granddaughter for the first time and felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. This was legacy, he thought. This was immortality, not in deeds or achievements, but in the continuation of love from one generation to the next. Rose married in 1905 to a rancher's son named James. They took over a portion of Colt's ranch and expanded it, building their own house and starting their own family. Colt and Zara became grandparents for more times over the next several years. Samuel, always the independent one, went to Santa Fe to study business and came back with grand plans to expand the family enterprises. He opened 3 more bakeries in different towns, all using his mother's recipes, and they were all successful. As Colt and Zara grew older, as their hair turned gray and their movements slowed, they spent more and more time together on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set and the stars come out. They held hands like young lovers, and they talked about their life together, remembering the good times and the hard times and how they had faced everything together. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked one evening in 1915. They were both in their 60s now, still healthy but feeling the weight of their years. Giving up the mines, staying in Lordsburg, tying yourself to a widow and her pie business. Colt looked at her, at the woman who had been his partner for 37 years, who had given him children and grandchildren and a life worth living. "Never," he said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You were my destiny, Zara. From the moment I smelled those pies, from the moment I heard you humming alone in your kitchen, I was yours. Everything good in my life came from the day I decided to stay." Zara smiled, that same smile that had captivated him all those years ago. "I love you, Colt Quinn." "I love you too, Zara Quinn," Colt said. "Always have, always will." They lived many more years together, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, watching their family grow and flourish. The pie business continued, passed down through the generations. The ranch prospered, divided among their children but kept in the family. On a warm summer evening in 1925, Colt passed away peacefully in his sleep, Zara holding his hand. He was 73 years old, and he died as he had lived the last 47 years, loved and content. Zara lived another 5 years, continuing to bake pies in the small adobe house where it had all started, humming as she worked. When she passed in 1930 at the age of 78, her children buried her next to Colt on a hilltop overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over everything they had built together. On their shared headstone, their children had engraved a simple epitaph. "She hummed while baking pies alone. He tasted heaven and asked her to stay." Together, they built a life of love. And in Lordsburg, New Mexico, for generations to come, people would tell the story of the lonely cowboy and the widow who made the best pies in the territory, and how a chance meeting on a hot summer day in 1878 had turned into a love story for the ages. The Quinn family continued to grow and prosper, and somewhere in every branch of that family tree, someone always remembered to bake pie, to hum while they worked, and to never take for granted the power of staying when you found something worth staying for.